So this is where I live, the global borough of Lambeth. Over a third of the residents from different minority groups, 130 different languages spoken. Just at the end of my street, there's a Nigerian cab firm, Irish pub, Sikh guy runs the chemist. That way there's my dry cleaner, Turkish, Chinese restaurant. Behind me, my street, fish and chip shop, which is Cypriot. My newsagent is South African. And there's an Italian deli. Living here, diversity is so much a part of our way of life that it's difficult to believe that in other parts of the country that same diversity is causing fear, confusion, and even hatred.
Another northern English town erupts in violence.
Riots in northern towns and the thousands of votes won by British National Party election candidates are signs of a Britain hung up about race, unconvinced by the ideal of multiculturalism. In the wake of the terrorist attacks on America, our leading tabloid newspaper headlined its editorial, "Islam is not evil religion." It was as if the whole country might suddenly reject communities of Muslims that have lived here for a generation. As a liberal who believes passionately in a diverse Britain, this depresses and disturbs me. The opinions and experiences of ethnic minorities are vital to any debate on race. But what do white British people think? Is Britain a racist country? From the leading polling company ICM, we commissioned a unique survey of white opinion. ICM questioned 1,000 people representing a cross-section of the white population. The political establishment tells us that multiculturalism is working, that we can all live side by side while respecting cultural differences. To question this ideal is itself deemed racist. But do white people really believe in it? Armed with the results of our survey, I set out across Britain to find out.
The attitudes we associate with racism have been reduced to a tiny minority. Most of us think more should be done to promote race relations. Virtually nobody objects to a newsreader in a turban. We recognise that black people face discrimination at work. Fewer than 1 in 50 people would mind having a black boss. But perhaps the best news is this. 3 out of 4 of us think Britain is a better place as a result of its racial diversity.
So our survey's first findings are both remarkable and inspiring. Britain seems to be a genuinely tolerant country.
We used to do smoked haddock years ago and lots of cod sales and stuff like that, but it has changed over the years to more exotic species. If we don't sell a whiting one day to an Englishman, we'll sell a snapper to a West Indian. Right. The African people like those. Right. There's a lot of African sales. And also the red ones, the red tilapia, and the South Americans like them. Stocks of fish comes in from the West Indies as well, the butterfish.
Yeah, sort of United Nations of fish. Brilliant.
Since the 1960s, public policy has gradually moved away from assimilation towards multiculturalism, away from forcing people to adopt British culture and traditions, and towards allowing them to keep their own. Brixton Market, down the road from my home, seems to show how successfully this approach has been implemented. But across London, in the East End, I began to discover white doubts beneath the surface of multiculturalism. I met Terry Penton.
Really Bangladeshi olives?
Yeah. Tamarind.
Oh, I'll have some of them. That's for sure. I'm not eating that. Oh, no, I don't eat it. It's gorgeous. Multiculturalism. Very, very fattening.
We'll make a successful multicultural society in this country. We can't do the Bengali people can't do alone. We need you and you need me.
Terry said that 20 years ago he used to demonstrate against the National Front. He liked the idea of living in a mixed area. But Terry's views have changed, and now he's moving out to the suburbs.
So there's not many local people here, white people?
No, hardly any. It's very trendy. The local communities just don't mix. Just
not mixing. These are people who come here imported for the day, and then they all go back this evening.
This looks pretty mixed to me. You've got an Afro-Caribbean stall there. You've got Asian, Indian stalls here. You've got Jewish bagel shop up there.
Yeah.
You've got young white trendy coffee bar up there.
Where's the pie mash stall then? And jelly deal stalls?
Well, there's a pub around the corner that says it's doing jelly deals.
No, it's not.
It is. There's a sign for it.
Terry's culture was alive and well, and not just being enjoyed by traditional East Enders.
What do you make of this?
I think it's
Terry.
wonderful. By the Spitalfields, it seems a bit cut off from the rest of everything else happening today, though. It's mainly, well, it's 100% white when it shouldn't be. It should be multiculturalism is there as well. But it's, as I was saying before, it just seems us and them. There's not a mix.
For Terry, the curry festivals and trendy coffee shops are just a facade. Once the day trippers have left, the reality of the East End is of segregation and violence. He claims his 3 boys have been beaten up by Asian gangs.
The East End was quite a nice place to be brought up and live. Because of all the tension, poverty that's here, that's no longer the case.
Is it you that's changed or the East End that's changed?
Maybe a bit of both.
Walk down Brick Lane, looks like the model of multiculturalism. People go there on a Friday, Saturday night for a curry or whatever. You know, it's become a sort of trendy place. But you said your sons wouldn't walk down. So why would your sons not go down Brick Lane?
In fear of attack. That they would be attacked. They could walk down there 100 times and never be attacked, but there could be that one chance, like my son did, walk down there and he was attacked and knocked unconscious. And we're talking about a 14-year-old boy.
Do you think the sort of people down Brick Lane, the sort of trendy people, do you think they understand where you're coming from?
No, I don't. They'd probably think I was a racist. But they're not white working class. They're white middle class, upper middle class people, trendies as we call them, that can come in and come out. The true East Ender has always been warm, funny and accepted other persons. However, that is changing because the so-called true East Ender is growing intolerant and they are feeling left out by a pretty much new wave of immigrants that are coming into the borough. It may be seen as quite an extreme view, but I would go to the extent of saying that the indigenous white population is being ethnically cleansed. If you put your hand on your heart, I don't think colour necessarily comes into it. What comes into it is you want to live amongst your own. You don't get the two communities mixed at all.
Would kids from this estate play football in the road with kids from that estate?
No.
Why not?
No. Just doesn't happen. Just doesn't happen.
Terry is a successful building contractor. He took me to where he was building a new extension. Up on the roof, I talked to one of his workers. His resentment was much closer to the surface.
I've got Asian mates, brilliant, come to my house, have a tea or a beer, same with like coloured guys. I don't even look at them as a Pekni or a black man or a Chinaman or a Jew. I don't look at them like that because they're decent enough fellas. But you try living next to someone when he's knocking up a curry elephant or something like that, and the window's running in the window. It never works. It's too many differences. It's too much resentment.
Never work? Never
No.
ever?
I don't think so. I don't want my kids coming home and speaking Punjabi. What for? They're in England. They speak English. Learn English.
So it's all right as long as they adopt our ways?
Yes.
You're seeing in parts of the country, Bradford and that, where that melting pot has ignited and it has gone off up there. And I think people fear, when that happened, people were expecting the same thing around here to happen. Some people saying like, you know, Custer's last stand, we're surrounded by Indians, and let's get the rifles out.
For people like Terry Penton, those of us who come here for a late night curry or a bagel are sort of multicultural tourists, enjoying all the good things, but not having to cope with the sorts of problems he has to cope with living in a genuinely diverse society. Now, I can understand where Terry's coming from, but when you talk to him, you see something else that confirms what we saw in our poll, that his expectation is that Asian people should fit in with English traditions, that it's all very well to have a couple of Asian friends, but people have got great misgivings about living in areas which are genuinely mixed. So maybe both the teeming streets of Brick Lane on a Friday night full of middle-class people enjoying the occasional cultural experience and the attitudes of Terry and his friends are two sides of the same phenomenon.
Terry's experiences, and the way he's interpreted them, are dispiriting. But this story of white people seeing themselves as victims is repeated a long way from the mean streets of the East End. Despite huge differences in the numbers of ethnic minority citizens in different parts of the country, our survey found similar concerns repeated across Britain.
Discrimination is discrimination, and just because you're white middle class doesn't mean you can't be discriminated against.
In the leafy suburb of Sutton Coldfield, Michel Plant's local carnival association applied to Birmingham City Council for a small grant. But the council's policy was to fund city-wide events, or those which emphasise the city's inclusiveness and cultural diversity. Her application was rejected, leaving her feeling victimised.
We all felt a real strong sense of injustice about it. And it's a novel experience because I've not been discriminated against in that sense before. Racism is a bad, bad thing, but it has just gone too far.
This nation particularly has worked so hard to create racial harmony that I actually think it's got to the point where it's pushed too hard. It's not a natural progression. There's been too much of a push. People get peed off with the whole situation, and it actually creates, as I said before, I think it creates a kind of racism.
Half of the people in our survey said they'd rather live in white or mainly white areas.
But when we asked where they thought other white people wanted to live, the result was more extreme. Fewer than 1 in 8 thought people would want to live in a mixed area. So what's the truth here?
For me, if an Asian family moved into the street, I would actually be quite pleased because I would like to get to know something about their culture, and perhaps on a neighbourly basis. You can then, can't you? I think that's what's funny about it, because people in individual situations often don't mind, that it doesn't bother them. It's when you get a group, it's when you feel you're the minority, that's when it becomes a problem. The perception is that as soon as an area is mainly out of white, where the white people become a minority, for whatever reason, it becomes a rougher area. End of the day, and I'm probably going to get lynched by a lot of Suttonians for this, I'm going to have more in common with a 33-year-old white middle-class woman than I would do with a 33-year-old Asian Hindi lady with different religion to me, different cultural background, different values and sets of priorities, which is fine. That's what makes the world go round. But I'm going to have more in common with this lady. That doesn't mean I can't talk to this lady and have a relationship with her, but I'm going to feel more secure with this lady because I know exactly where she's coming from. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. That's not racism.
Our survey found that many white people believe every British citizen should adopt traditional British ways. Over time, this may change, but the anti-Muslim backlash after the attack on New York called into question the depth of white people's commitment to diversity.
Not only did 1 in 4 people say that to be truly British you have to be white and that you can't be a Muslim, most people thought that everyone should adopt British customs, and 4 out of 5 people said to be British you had to speak English.
Our survey showed that many white people opposed the attempt by ethnic minority communities to hold on to their identity and culture. I heard much more about these tensions on the next part of my journey, to the north.
Bottom of Lovell Park Heights.
My mother brought me to live here when I was 8, after my parents separated and she started a degree at Leeds University.
Smells don't change. It's like someone cooked a meal the day the tar block opened, and it's been smelling of that meal ever since. My mother could stand here and watch me in the playground of the school that's down there. Although the school's gone, there's still a fence that went round the school, but now it encloses new housing.
My memory is of a wall separating the main school from a unit for children who had just arrived from India or Pakistan. Only when the immigrant children had learnt enough English were they allowed to cross the wall.
This was the front room, always full of hippies from Leeds University, listening to the Rolling Stones and eating and burning joss sticks, and maybe other things. So the bathroom and the loo, kitchen, same as they were. This room was my mother's bedroom, and this room was my bedroom. I remember crying myself to sleep in this bedroom because Leeds United, which was my football team, which has lost to Chelsea in the replay of the cup final. And that was the year they were supposed to win everything, and they won absolutely nothing. The strange thing about coming back here is it makes you aware of how much it's changed in 30 years. When I lived here, it was only 5 years after a Conservative Party candidate stood with the election slogan, "Vote Labour if you want a nigger next door." Now no politician would use that sort of language, no mainstream politician. No one now would dream of building a primary school and putting a wall across the playground with Asian children on one side of the wall and white children on the other side of the wall. But while those walls have been knocked down, when we go to Bradford, Blackburn, there's different sorts of walls, and they're not getting knocked down, they seem to be getting higher.
When we think about diversity in Britain, we often assume that every area with a large non-white population is the same. With our largest Pakistani community and a white population mainly born and bred in Yorkshire, Bradford is less multicultural than duocultural. Over recent years, a string of reports have highlighted the pressures that are driving this city into two segregated camps. The rundown estate of Ravenscliffe is predominantly white, and there were riots here in the summer. Many local people claim they've been neglected in favour of the Asian community in the nearby district of Manningham. John Bolton has always lived here.
It sounds like I'm pointing a finger and blaming.
No, that's what people feel.
I think the people tell you that they feel as if they've been forgotten, ignored, pushed into the corner and forgotten. I think that's what they tell you. A lot of the young people feel that the Asian people in Manningham get a lot of money spent on them, and they get a lot of resources spent on them, and they feel, you know, that because they're not Asian, that they get forgotten about. There is a lot of hard feeling on both sides, and that's not being helped by people like the BNP, which in these sort of areas, you know, making promises they can't keep.
To put it in very basic terms, my kids have been given a pile of rubble to play with, and nothing else.
Nobody dares say this because, oh, you know, you'd be branded racist.
Yeah.
But they see a lot of money going into Manningham. I could take you to Manningham Park, show you how beautiful Manningham Park is.
It's difficult to establish how Ravenscliffe might be losing out to Manningham, but John's other concerns are more personal and more concrete.
The school was right here. It was a lovely school, big school, and it was a good mix from all backgrounds and, you know, Asian, English, everything. And they just pulled it down.
This school goes, and instead what we've got now is almost all Asian schools, almost all white schools.
That's right.
People like you want to mix, but don't want your kids to go to schools which are overwhelmingly Asian. Is that, I mean...
That's right.
Back at John's house, I asked his wife, Michelle, and his daughter, Samantha, what they thought.
Basically, I thought that Samantha would feel out of it.
Yeah.
You know, being in a minority, in an Asian school. I have to be really careful what I say here, you know what I mean?
That's
I'm not
fine.
really supposed to.
No, you don't
be,
have to be careful.
Um,
Every parent, there's not a parent in the country who doesn't agonise about which school to send their kids to.
Michelle's concerns about schools in which white children are a minority were reflected in the opinions of people across Britain.
In our survey, we asked people, what sort of school do parents want to send their children to? 4 out of 10 said an all-white school, and fewer than 1 in 10 said a very mixed school.
In the wake of the summer riots in Bradford, Home Secretary David Blunkett was in town for the day. He agreed to meet John during an official visit to an Asian youth centre. John began by asking him about growing segregation.
First of all, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
I'm a big fan, actually. I just wonder, see, I've lived in Ravenscliffe all my life, and there seems to be a divide that's growing. The way the children just seem to be separated and the entire community, and I just wonder if you've got any concerns over this at present.
Should we have ethnically divided schools? Can we have faith schools for Islam and Sikh community and Hindus when we have them for the Jewish and for the various Christian denominations, or would that create a divide? Faced with that contradiction, I modestly agreed to some schools from faiths coming in to the state and being part of it, but by doing so, risked actually continuing to reinforce that divide. So I plead guilty to the contradictions and to the schizophrenia, if you like, that we're all faced with.
The government schools white paper has since heralded plans to encourage many more faith schools, but over half those we surveyed opposed the idea of state schools for ethnic minority religions. There could be a real backlash against the government's proposals.
Nobody seems to want Bradford to be dividing, but it is dividing.
They're building this big, big wall, right from the very youngest of your generations up. You need to stop separating people. You need to take that invisible wall down. Get people back together as a community. I mean, it won't be easy. It won't be easy, and I don't know how to go about doing that.
But you'd certainly stop. You'd integrate the schools.
Absolutely. That's where I'd start. We young people. It has to be that way. It can't be any other way.
Is the increasing segregation of Bradford affecting the attitudes of young people? Our survey found that the young are significantly more likely to welcome the greater diversity of Britain. But John's daughter, Samantha, tells a different story.
You're the sort of next generation of Bradford. Do you think it's going to get more divided? Do you think less mixing?
Yeah, less mixing. I think it's going to get worse. It's not how it is.
So Samantha, do you think you'd marry an Asian lad?
No, I don't like Asian lads.
Why?
Well, they come down in really nice cars and that lot on the street with music blaring out and that, and then everybody wonders why they get loads of money, and they've got like loads of money up Manningham and stuff like that, and everybody just wonders why, and we've got nothing round here at all, and they've got it all.
Yeah.
We don't think it's fair.
And they're all the same?
More or less, yeah. Everyone that I've met, they are, yeah.
That's pretty grim, isn't it?
What Samantha said shocked me, actually. Hopefully I've taught her to be very broad-minded, to make judgments not on race, but judgments on individuals, on how they see a person, not a race or a colour. But she stereotyped, and that shocked me, did that, the way she had a general attitude towards Asian boys. And I was quite taken back by what she said.
Some of the things John says might raise eyebrows at a Liberal dinner party, but I believed him when he said he had tried to bring Samantha up to be tolerant. Something else lay behind her prejudice. Maybe it was watching her neighbourhood deteriorate, but it was also the segregation of her city.
But with families that don't have any Asian friends and their children are going to predominantly white schools, you know, you've got a situation where ignorance is building, lack of understanding. And what we don't understand, we destroy.
The problems caused by segregation in Bradford are mirrored in other northern towns. Here in Blackburn, an apparently innocuous council policy aimed at encouraging new businesses backfired. The council grants a rent reduction to all stallholders introducing a new product. A Turkish stallholder was given the reduction for providing halal meat slaughtered in the way required by Muslims. The established butchers, and many of their white customers, concluded that it was now they who were the victims of race discrimination.
I'm a butcher, I'm not a politician. A large population in Blackburn is of ethnic background who, by nature of their religion, they can't shop with us. Yeah. So we need a halal meat butcher, and I've no problem with that at all.
When the halal butcher arrived in Blackburn, Whitakers were the first to give him a job.
When he arrived in this country from Turkey, we were the first people to offer him legitimate employment at Whitakers Butchers. Yeah. And his English was poor, but he was a good halal meat butcher, but he didn't know the traditional skills. We taught him those, and he learned quite a lot of English from us, which was difficult with my Lancashire accent, but it was good fun, and we actually became friends. Yeah. He left here to set up a halal meat stall, which is fine. What we want is a level playing field. We want all the butchers to pay the same price. That's all.
And the reason you haven't got a level playing field is
because one butcher's being offered cheap rent, and all the rest of us have to pay full rent.
How did it become a race issue then?
Well, it wasn't a race issue, but they seem to be backpedaling all the time and saying, look, this thing is going to blow up out of all proportion if we don't, you know, if we don't let this lad have it at half price or whatever. And so when people read the evening paper and customers came round, then they make it a racist issue because everybody says, well, this lad's getting our price rent, it's not fair on you. So all of a sudden everybody's talking race, you see, and that's totally wasn't the contention when we started.
There needs to be halal meat butchers in the market because we're missing out on a large section of trade. We want halal meat butchers, but on the same rent, because our customers can shop with a halal meat butcher, but it doesn't work the other way around.
In places like Blackburn, white people often say that the council gives special privileges to ethnic minorities. It's a charge the council denies.
I have to say there were some accusations at the time that we'd only given this man his 50% rent reduction because in fact he was Asian, and I can assure that's not true.
What would have happened if he'd been an organic butcher?
He would have got the same concession.
An enormous number of white people seem to think, no, the council's got a down on us, the council are always going to put the Asian community first. You know, how should I interpret? You know, how should I interpret that?
It's the rumour mill as much as anything that contributes to the problem. People believe one section of the community is getting something when in fact they're not.
The beef is we want a level playing field. We want all butchers to pay the same rent. Whatever their race or religion, where they come from, where they're going to, all butchers should pay the same rent. That's the beef, that's it.
If there's any race involved in this issue, it's against us. I mean, we're the aggrieved party. Not the lad that's selling halal meat, it's us that are the aggrieved party.
This story is not about special treatment, but about the willingness of apparently reasonable and well-intentioned people to jump to the conclusion that they are the victims of reverse discrimination imposed by local politicians. I found the same sense of white people feeling victimised and confused on the next stop of my journey to the Yorkshire town of Keighley. Sandra has lived here for 30 years. Their daughter Karina was born here. They say they welcome their area becoming more mixed, but now they claim that local Asian children are out of control.
A couple of weeks ago when I came here, there were some Asian children here trying to set light to the door. It's part of a feeling of being under siege. I was brought up to respect religious buildings, whether they be, you know, a mosque or a church or whatever, and I find that kind of attitude difficult to understand. The door is locked while the service is on, and that's not true in other churches.
So if I arrived late for the service, I wouldn't be able to get in?
No, you wouldn't. You could knock on the door and someone would come and answer it to you. But
you have to lock yourselves in?
Yes, yes.
The Asian population in Keighley is still very much a minority, but to listen to Sandra and Karina is to be reminded of Terry's talk of being surrounded in the East End. White children vandalise churches and white lads hassle women, but living in a divided community, Sandra and her daughter see everything as a race issue.
Just across from here where we live, it's become wholly Asian. I mean, there's hardly a white person in that area now. And the park where I used to take Karina when she was little, you wouldn't dare go in now because it's considered an Asian park, and there's a sense in which people say this is our territory now quite openly, and that's a huge change from feeling all of this area was available to us. It isn't now in the same way. It feels very threatening and unpleasant.
I just remember more, I don't know why, but I was walking in town and they said something to me in front of you, and it was like I couldn't even really say anything to you about it because it was just, I was so embarrassed about it. It was just, I just couldn't believe that. It's like, but she's my mother. It's just, you can't say that in front of somebody like that. And now it's just become completely normal to say things to older people and, you know, people who you think deserve some respect. Years ago I felt like I had some protection, at least if there was somebody male with me, but now that's gone.
What sort of things would they say?
Well, I mean, sexually abusive comments and just derogatory things about being white and female and a prostitute and upsetting things.
But it's just been more than just abuse, because you were indecently assaulted, which is a physical attack. It's not politically correct to say there's a problem here. You know, I felt for a very long time you could not say
has been a big
Asian lads are becoming more and more aggressive towards women on our streets, girls and women. There's been no forum for it at all. You couldn't even tell anybody. The feeling that you have no respect offered you has undermined just about everything that I have believed in. I want to believe we can get on and be equal and so on, but I just don't feel that's happening at all.
In a curry house, the family seemed happy and relaxed. Later they went shopping for a sari. Perhaps it's not surprising that when politicians praise multiculturalism, they talk about chicken tikka masala. We seem so much happier to dip into diversity than to have it change our neighbourhoods.
It'd be nice if we could learn from our differences and gain something from it, accept that we are different and see that as a positive thing, because by saying that we're all the same, you know, if we were all the same, the world would be a terribly dull and boring place. So if we could see it as a good thing that we're different, then I think a lot of things would be a lot easier.
What we're saying in Britain is everybody should be allowed to be just how they are and not to impinge on anyone else, but it's about learning and growing and hearing all sorts of things and letting other things come in. But if you want the doors shut and your ears shut to other cultures because they might actually harm you, there isn't any way of moving forward out of that. This would be quite stunning, I'm sure, in that. It's a lovely colour as well. You have to have some practice. You have to have some practice at doing it.
These did not look like people living under siege. But what Karina and Sandra had said also made me think that the commitment of white people to diversity is often fragile.
The thing that ends up making me feel really desperate, really angry, is they keep saying they don't think they're allowed to talk about it. They don't think they're allowed to express their concerns. We've got to get through that. Unless people can talk, unless they can talk about how they feel, and most importantly, unless communities can talk to each other about the things which make them angry and upset, well then, you know, the future isn't going to be places like this, multicultural, exciting, communities mixing together. It is going to be a vision of segregated communities in different schools and different places. It's only by talking that we can get back to that multicultural dream, and it's about time we started.
She's a local MP for Keighley. Some of you may know her. She's probably been to your schools and stuff. She's been to our centre before as well. So if you could just be nice and give her a warm welcome.
In July, Anne Cryer spoke about problems in her constituency. Having already condemned forced marriage, she criticised some Asian parents who take their children out of school for lengthy visits to their mother country. More controversially, she questioned the practice of importing wives from villages in Pakistan who speak no English and have few resources with which to integrate into a new country. Following her comments, there was a predictable outcry.
MP Anne Cryer has, by her own admission, put herself in the firing line. She wants immigration laws to be reviewed to stop the importing of poverty, as she puts it, but particularly she wants, apparently, to put curbs on immigrants who can't speak English. Is this what you really want, Mrs. Cryer? Immigrants can't be allowed in until they intend to speak good English?
With the tabloids putting words in her mouth, I wanted to find out what Anne Cryer was really saying and to understand why she was saying it. We went to one of the parks that had been described as a no-go area for whites.
This is the main entrance to Lum Park. I'll just pull in here. It's a nice park and it's used by whites and Bangladeshis and Pakistanis. And,
it's a nice little area there, isn't it?
Yeah, I hope it'll continue.
It's not exactly inner city ghetto. The image that was portrayed of you was that you were a racist MP.
Unfortunately, the tabloids took my words completely out of context. Those people who have actually troubled to read my statement will see, far from it being racist, they will see actually words about integration, about improvements in the Asian community, about getting away from this culture of underachievement. I just want to see changes in my lifetime, changes for the better for my Asian community. And it will be so much easier if I behaved like other MPs and just kept quiet and just went on muttering about how things were wrong. I would have a much easier life.
Why is it that you have to be such a maverick figure to talk about these issues? Why is it?
I don't know. I really do not know, because while I was in Parliament I talked to quite a number of my colleagues, and yes, they were all saying how very brave I'd have been and that they agreed with everything I said, but they're not really prepared to put their heads over the parapet. Now, you know, if we're going to get a discussion going on these issues, there's got to be more than one person doing it.
These letters, what are the
The
sources?
reason-
the
the
source people these
reason
are from?
that-
Is it usual suspects? Or?
No.
I agree totally with what Anne Cryer said, and she is very brave. I wish to express my dismay at the condemnation of our MP by representatives of various local organisations. Finishing off with, we've all fallen into the trap of fearing that speaking the truth is racist. It feels to me this is revealing a huge amount of anger.
Anger that there has been criticism of Anne Cryer for having the temerity to raise these issues, not questioning the accuracy of what she's said.
So this is not anger about the fact that we live in a multicultural society. This is anger about the fact that we can't talk about the issues raised by living in a multicultural society.
I was actually at a grammar school in Bradford, when the first Asian pupil ever arrived, and he was a friend of mine at that time. So I'd like to think I've been around a long, long time. I've been through the riot situation. I've seen the streets of Bradford, not quite as bad as the last lot. Open fights on the streets. And I still say one of the key elements that is missing is nobody knows what language to use to address these issues. Nobody knows what to talk about, nobody knows what to say. Because the minute you say something, the minute you open the lid on what people perceive to be a can of worms, you're accused of being a racist.
So when you spoke out, you weren't speaking out because you had some sort of huge political axe to grind. You were speaking out because you were doing what you had to do as an MP.
Well, what I'm saying is that we should be living together. My messages are both for the white community and the Asian community, that is, that we must have integration. Otherwise, we're going on the way to a Belfast-like situation where the communities don't understand each other, they know nothing of each other. It's just very sad, actually, but I think by and large things are improving around here. You know, we can all live together reasonably happily. But I think on both sides there has to be an understanding and a tolerance. And sometimes the understanding and the tolerance is wearing a bit thin.
As if on cue, we stumbled on some people whose tolerance seemed to have worn away entirely. These old guys felt their bowling green was being besieged.
They're supposed to be sat on them. Every time they come up, they sit on.
They're up here annoying us every sodding day like that.
And they come across here.
Get up on the hut, they pull the pipes down.
Walking on,
And down the sodding lot of them.
that.
Multicultural society. I would have dropped sodding lot of
See,
them.
they're going now, look.
They've taken over this bloody park, they've took over Victoria Park, Cliff Castle, Dempsey Park, and they're after this one now.
They're going after this now.
They bend over backwards for them, give them everything they want, and they still want more.
Well, what do you make of this, Anne?
I think they're a damn nuisance.
I don't think it's as simple as it's been made out. Yeah, I think there's a generation gap. I think they're mainly young people, and I think we've mainly got an older generation here, of which I'm a member. I'm part of the older generation. I'm nearly 62. And I think we've been brought up in different times, and I think we were brought up to show respect to the older people.
I said they have all the respect in the world for their own.
Well, I'm not sure
for
about
us,
that.
But it's our colour. Oh, it is. It's racialist on their part, not ours.
I'm not
It's their
quite
part.
sure about that.
Look, behind stuff on gains, look now. Stones, look. Stone now, look.
Look, do anything.
I'll just go and have a word.
They're hounding us. They're hounding us out of the park.
You want to watch Anne, you might get a stone coming over the hedge. Eh? All right, lads.
So this was Anne Cryer, equally willing to take on boys throwing stones and bitter old men. But she also took on local community leaders and members of her own party. For them, her comments were a betrayal of multiculturalism, a return to the discredited idea that immigrants should assimilate.
I just can't understand what they think they're doing. There's been enough problems around here. Why were they throwing stones on the green? What are you behaving like this for? What?
Part of your message is about if people are living in Britain, they should learn to speak English, that certain customs, like forced marriage, are ones which we should question.
Yes.
Sounds like an assimilationist message.
Yeah. Well,
is that what it is?
It isn't. No, far from it. I get a lot out of my relationship with my Asian community, but I've got at the same time to say to them, we do need more integration. Not that you should lose your traditions, your cultures, not at all. Just that we should see more integration so that we get a better understanding between the whites and the Asians, so that they live in closer proximity, that they go to the same schools, that they speak the same language, which has got to be English. We need greater integration. We do not want an apartheid situation. And if we don't watch it, we're moving towards that sort of situation. And as I say, some members of the Asian leadership and many white people are quite happy with us drifting towards that situation. I'm not happy, and I'll argue against anything that moves us further down the path of apartheid.
My last stop in the north was Oldham, near Manchester, a working-class town that feels on the wrong side of the north-south divide. It too was torn apart by riots this summer. I heard a common complaint amongst those who feel themselves the victims of multiculturalism in a pub by a white estate, that even to be proud of being English was to be seen as racist.
You can't be English anymore. You just can't do it.
Because if you do?
Because if you do, you're branded as a racist.
It can only get better. I don't think it can get any worse.
How do you feel about that?
It's going to get worse. You can't celebrate being English and you can't celebrate it in England. And there's something going wrong somewhere.
These depressing views were reflected in our survey. 2 out of 3 said there would be as much or more racial prejudice in 5 years' time. And in the same pub, we stumbled across some people who would never be happy to live in a mixed country.
My mum and dad would not like it if I went home with a packet.
If I ever have a lad or a girl or anything, I will tell her exactly how I feel, and then it's up to her. I'll give her the choice, or him the choice, to do what he wants. But I don't agree with this race mixing. They live off us. They don't come over here to give us anything. They come over here to exploit us, to get anything they can off us. What do they give to us? They own the mobile phone shops, they own the kebab houses, they own the taxi ranks, they own every single corner shop that you look at.
So it sounds like they're making a contribution to local business, eh?
It is.
Big time.
It's all a big racket. But
isn't they bringing money into the area?
We don't get the money. Own community. So when the riots were going on, it was all them that got to speak. There was no white people that spoke on the TV programmes. It was always Pakistanis and how hard done by the are.
We're getting, to put it bluntly,
to me, they're over here in Oldham, the Pakis are more racist than what we are.
My experiences in places like Oldham made me return to South London with a sense of relief. But they also made me ask just how integrated my own community was. Surely here there was no segregation.
So here we are in Brixton, a success story for multiculturalism, but yet if you walk up this street and around this area, all the bars are either predominantly white or predominantly black. The question is, why is this happening? But also, does it really matter?
This, after all, is the multicultural vision. We can eat our own food, dance to our own music, mix with people who share our tastes. Poignantly, the buzz, the mix, the diversity here reminds me of that most multicultural and successful of cities, New York. Maybe because these people had grown up in mixed schools and areas, few saw cultural differences as a barrier to living side by side. Here was confirmation of our survey's finding that young people overwhelmingly welcome diversity. Confidence in diversity and the determination to bring your children up with that confidence. Is this the answer? Kate Hellman is not just happy to live here, but she and her husband Sten are making a conscious effort to bring their sons up in a mixed environment. Their younger son Oliver goes to the successful primary school round the corner.
Just eat your breakfast because we're going to be late for school. Come on.
Other people that I've spoken to, and some of our work in our survey, suggests that white parents feel that their children's cultural identity is threatened by them being in a class where maybe white children are in the minority.
I think it's completely the reverse. I think Oliver's able to contrast his own experience, his own life, his family's traditions with those that other children have. And I think that's a very rich and rewarding experience for a child.
Time. 8:30.
Instruments.
Well,
I think that's going to fit in there, to be quite honest with you. Okay, do it up, and then it's time to go. Let's go.
What's the mix of clan members?
The ethnic mix is really broad, so there's people from... There's actually a fantastic map as you walk into the school showing where children come from.
Yes.
And there are children from China, Bangladesh, India, every state of Africa, South America. There's been talk around South London about having schooling for just black children, for just Afro-Caribbean schooling. And that terrifies me because I think the exchange between different cultures is important, and it has to start in school. And it has to start by children sitting next to each other and having the normal exchanges that kids do in school for them to grow up understanding each other. See you later. See you later. Off you go. You can go up.
It's the first day of term, and Oliver's brother Luke is making the journey to his new mixed secondary school in Putney.
How would you have felt if your parents had said to you, well, we're sending you to this school, and by the way, it's all white?
I would have been angry and disappointed because, well, I can't do anything about it that much. Children don't have very much power really over their adults and their parents. So they can't say, no, I'm not going to that school. They just have to say, okay, I'm going to that school. That's all settled then.
I do envy my children. The most sort of culturally diverse thing we had is a teacher starting the next year who's from Warwickshire or something,
For Luke and his parents, anything other than a mixed school would have been second best. But in our survey, only 1 in 5 people said they would have made the same choice. It's a sobering thought. My oldest son is the age now I was when I lived in Leeds. The school he and his brother go to is very mixed, and there are no walls across the playground. I want my kids to grow up believing every child deserves a decent start in life, regardless of their colour or class. But it's easy to sound smug from the safety of a comfortable middle-class existence. Britain's most racially divided areas tend also to be poor and run-down places, where it's always tempting to find someone to blame. To have faith in the future of a diverse Britain, and to deal with the tensions thrown up by events like the terrible attacks on America, we have to face the fundamental dilemma at the heart of multiculturalism. We either integrate or segregate. In many places it's a stark choice, but until we make it, we face more division.
So here I am, back home, journey's end. And what has the journey meant? Well, something learnt, something that made me angry, and something that confirmed what I believed in the first place. What I've learnt is that there's no such thing as multiculturalism in Britain. It's different in every single place. There's lots of black and Asian people here in Lambeth. There's lots of Asian people in Oldham and Bradford, but that's just about where the similarity between these places ends. The thing that surprised me is how angry I got about how Anne Cryer had been treated. Here's a woman who's really fighting for integration in her community, not assimilation, but yet she got vilified in the papers and by parts of her own party. If people like Anne Cryer can't talk about their concerns, if communities can't talk to each other about the things that they're worried about, then I fear the future in places like Keighley and Bradford is of more division. It is of those places starting to feel and look like Belfast. And the thing that's been confirmed for me is that we still turn to race too often when things start to go wrong in our lives. We still haven't really owned a sense of multiculturalism. We still don't feel this diversity as part of our own identity. And we have to make that commitment if we're going to have the debates that we need to have and truly make our country multicultural.
Birds of a feather flock together, don't they? That's a basic human psychology.
I feel there's a bigger divide, if not bigger now, than there was 20 years ago.
Faith is all we've got, isn't it? Optimism, hope, faith.
I'm not right-wing at all. All I want is to be treated fairly. I want my family to be treated. I want to live in a sociable place.
I'm not saying I have all the solutions. I'm just asking questions.
I am not racist. I'm not, but